Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every story here is inspired by the strength of ordinary people facing extraordinary moments, and you never know which one might stay with you forever. For 10 long years, Daniel Carter dreamed of only one thing: going home. Every sleepless night overseas, every lonely birthday, every holiday spent staring at faded family photographs, he imagined unlocking the front door of the small farmhouse his late father had left him. It wasn't a mansion or a valuable estate. It was simply home. After serving in dangerous conflict zones as a humanitarian security contractor, Daniel had finally decided enough was enough. He packed everything he owned into 2 suitcases, bought a one-way ticket, and drove through the familiar country roads with a smile he hadn't worn in years. But as he turned onto the gravel driveway, his smile slowly disappeared. Children's bicycles lay beside the porch. Bright flowers bloomed in boxes he had never planted. Fresh curtains hung behind the windows. Someone had painted the old fence white. For a moment, Daniel wondered if he had driven to the wrong address. He checked the mailbox. The house number was correct. His heart pounded. Someone was living inside his home. He stepped onto the porch and knocked firmly. Seconds later, the door opened, revealing a woman in her early 30s. Her face showed surprise but not fear. Behind her stood 2 young children, a little boy clutching a stuffed bear and an older girl holding her brother's hand protectively. "Can I help you?" the woman asked gently. Daniel struggled to speak. I think you've mistaken this house. My name is Daniel Carter. This property belongs to me." The woman's face instantly turned pale. She whispered, "You're Daniel." He nodded. The color drained from her cheeks as if she had seen a ghost. The little girl looked up at her mother. "Mom, who is he?" The woman took a shaky breath before answering softly. "I think he's the man your grandfather always talked about." Daniel's confusion deepened. "What grandfather?" "The previous owner," she replied. "Mr. Samuel Carter." Daniel's chest tightened. "My father." The woman invited him inside, though both looked equally uncertain. The home had changed. New furniture filled the living room, children's drawings covered the refrigerator, and laughter seemed permanently woven into walls that once echoed with silence. "My name is Emily," she began. "2 years ago my husband died in a highway accident. I had nowhere to go. My landlord evicted us after I fell behind on rent. Your father found us sleeping in our car outside the church." Daniel stared silently. "He took us here," Emily continued. "He said no child should grow up believing the world had abandoned them." Daniel swallowed hard. "My father never mentioned this." Emily smiled sadly. "He probably knew you were somewhere dangerous. He didn't want you worrying." She walked toward a wooden cabinet and carefully removed an envelope sealed with Daniel's name written in his father's unmistakable handwriting. "I was told to give you this if you ever came home." Daniel's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single handwritten letter. "My son, if you're reading this, then you've finally come home. I pray I lived long enough to see that day, but if I didn't, know that I never stopped being proud of you. You may be surprised to find strangers living here. They're only strangers until you hear their story. Emily lost everything, just as many families do. Her children deserve safety more than empty rooms deserve ownership. If life has been kind enough to bring you home alive, then perhaps it has also given you the chance to decide what kind of man you truly want to be. Whatever choice you make it with compassion. Houses can be rebuilt. Hearts are much harder to repair." Daniel lowered the letter, unable to speak. His father had passed away 8 months earlier. No one had reached Daniel because he had been stationed in a remote region with limited communication. The funeral had already come and gone. The realization crushed him. Emily quietly apologized. "I know this house legally belongs to you. If you ask us to leave, we'll go. I don't know where, but we'll leave." The little boy looked at Daniel with frightened eyes. "Mom, are we losing our home again?" Those innocent words echoed through every room. Daniel looked around the house. The old walls carried new memories now. His father's rocking chair sat beside children's toys. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread instead of loneliness. For the first time in years, the house was alive. Yet part of him couldn't ignore the anger building inside. This was all he had left of his parents. Every corner held memories of birthdays, Christmas mornings, and family dinners. Could he simply give that away? That night he checked into the only motel in town instead of forcing a decision. Sleep refused to come. His father's letter lay open beside him while one question haunted his mind until sunrise. Was he returning to reclaim a house, or to discover the family he never expected to find? The next morning, Daniel drove back to the farmhouse before sunrise. He parked beneath the old oak tree his father had planted decades ago and sat quietly behind the wheel. The golden light slowly spread across the fields, and for the first time since returning home, he noticed something his anger had hidden. The house looked happier than he had ever remembered. Children's laughter drifted through an open window. Emily was watering the flowers on the porch while the little boy chased butterflies across the yard, and his sister carefully packed a lunchbox before helping her brother tie his shoes. It looked less like strangers occupying his home and more like life itself had returned to a place that had once been lonely. Daniel unfolded his father's letter again and read every line. One sentence refused to leave his mind. Houses can be rebuilt. Hearts are much harder to repair. Those words sounded exactly like his father. Samuel Carter had always believed that kindness was the greatest inheritance anyone could leave behind. Daniel finally stepped out of the truck and walked toward the porch. Emily immediately recognized him. Her expression was filled with worry. She had already packed several boxes near the front door, expecting him to ask them to leave. "I understand," she said softly before he could speak. "We found a shelter in the next county. It's not much, but we'll manage. I don't want to make this any harder for you." Daniel looked at the neatly stacked boxes, then at the frightened faces of the two children standing silently behind their mother. The little boy held his stuffed bear so tightly that its seams were beginning to tear. The older girl tried to appear brave, but tears were already forming in her eyes. Daniel took a slow breath. "Don't unpack those boxes," he said. Emily lowered her eyes, believing the worst was coming. "Because you're not leaving." She looked up in disbelief. "What?" Daniel smiled for the first time since returning home. "My father gave this house a purpose long before I came back. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. This house became your home because he wanted it to. I won't take that away from you." Emily burst into tears. The children looked confused until their mother dropped to her knees and hugged them tightly. "We get to stay," she whispered through her sobs. The little boy ran straight toward Daniel and wrapped his tiny arms around his waist. Daniel froze. No one had hugged him like that in years. Slowly, he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, feeling something inside himself begin to heal. Over the following weeks, Daniel moved into the small guest cottage behind the farmhouse that had once served as his father's workshop. Instead of selling the property or forcing the family out, he repaired the old building with his own hands. Every nail he hammered and every board he replaced reminded him that rebuilding a home was easier than rebuilding a broken heart. Emily insisted on paying rent, but Daniel refused. Instead, they reached an agreement. She would continue caring for the farmhouse, and together they would preserve Samuel Carter's legacy by opening the property to families facing emergencies. The old barn was transformed into a community food pantry, while unused rooms became temporary shelter for parents and children who had nowhere else to turn. Soon, neighbors who had once barely spoken to one another began volunteering. Some donated clothes, others brought food, furniture, or school supplies. Samuel's quiet act of kindness had become something much bigger than anyone imagined. Months passed, and Daniel grew close to the children. He helped the little boy learn to ride a bicycle on the same gravel road where he had learned as a child. He attended the little girls' school concert, cheering louder than anyone else in the audience. For the first time since losing both of his parents, Daniel no longer felt alone. He realized family wasn't always connected by blood. Sometimes it was built by compassion, sacrifice, and the courage to open your heart to people who needed it most. One autumn afternoon, while cleaning the attic, Daniel discovered another sealed envelope hidden beneath an old wooden chest. Again, it was addressed in his father's handwriting. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was one final letter. "My dear son, if you found this letter, then you've probably made the choice I hoped you would. I always believe that wealth isn't measured by what we keep but by what we leave behind in other people's lives. If Emily and those children are still with you, then you already know something many people spend their entire lives searching for, that love grows when it is shared. I couldn't leave you riches, but I prayed I could leave you wisdom. If this house becomes a place where broken people find hope, then it has fulfilled its greatest purpose." Daniel wiped away tears as he folded the letter. He walked outside and nailed a simple wooden sign beside the entrance to the property. It read, "Samuel's house. No one leaves without hope." Years later, travelers passing through the town often asked about the farmhouse where families always seemed to find help. They would hear the same story. It belonged to a man who came home expecting to reclaim a house but instead discovered a family waiting for him. Daniel never spoke about the sacrifice as if he were a hero. Whenever someone thanked him, he simply smiled and pointed toward the old oak tree. "My father taught me that a home isn't defined by who owns it," he would say. "It's defined by who feels safe inside it." And perhaps that was the greatest inheritance of all, not land, not money, not even the house itself, but the reminder that compassion can transform strangers into family and grief into hope. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness can change lives in ways we never expect, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who believes that goodness still exists in the world. Your support helps us continue bringing you powerful stories that inspire, comfort, and remind us all that hope is never truly lost.